joined.
Right, so welcome to the board meeting. So
don't touch the button.
Yeah, thank you. So Tom, shall we move over to fundraising and development?
I think so. Let's throw that hot potato into Craig's lap.
Mm-hmm.
There's not much of a hot to that potato right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, the issue is that, I and whatever have not really gotten much traction with this whole issue.
By traction, have you tried to get funds for us, Craig, and found that people just aren't responding?
I have had a couple. I've had like 3 opportunities to sound out people about it, and what I get is either they're just really not interested in supporting associations. Well, that's the major thing I get, is that they're not really interested in supporting organizations, that they're much more focused on projects at this point. So I don't know the right foundation to go to ask for organizational support. Or we have to work with particular projects that we want to fund that will then help start supporting some of the infrastructure.
Yeah, I keep looking for opportunities to, for association support. I think you saw I sent out one item, which was it had a very quick turnaround time, but it was really about innovations in associations. It didn't really. It was a little hard to fit us, I think. But I agree with you, Craig, that I think people want to fund projects. They don't want to fund associations. They would like to, but they would be willing to fund a project if an association said that they were going to, organize it and run it. So.
And frankly, just for everybody else, I put an email out suggesting that one thing the board could think about is having an invited guest to talk and present for maybe 20 or 30 minutes during a board meeting. But my idea is that if we would invite people from the big funding organizations, the WHOs, the USAIDs, to actually be on a board call with us to give them a little bit more familiarity with what the ISMA is and with what they're trying to do, that might stimulate some kind of interest in conversations that could be pursued to say, okay, how could we get the ISMA involved in a project, or how could the ISMA develop a project that would be responsive to some specific needs they have.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Craig, and just echoing what you and Wen observed, my experience considerable over many years, getting financial support from foundations, government, or for that matter, businesses to support sort of management administrative details of an organization, an association, what have you, very challenging, near impossible. If there are doors that are open, it's far more likely they're open for specific initiatives or projects and products that they feel just have far greater return on investment and for whatever dollars they're willing to cough up.
Yeah, well, there's something tangible to those things.
That said, I will, Jay, in your report of the joint call that was held with the European and Australian associations, I know that there's clear interest and need for pursuing funding for administrative management support, not only of ISMA but the other organizations too. It will be challenging. Not an easy nut to crack.
Yeah, I looked at what it would cost us to hire an association management firm, and what I was getting was between $2,000 and $4,000 a month, which it's just not something that we can afford right now.
This is Gail. I was just wondering, have we looked at things like the Grant Professionals Association or the Council on Foundations or some of these sort of umbrella groups that provide resources and guidance for these kinds of questions?
Several years back, I had conversations with the Council on Foundations, but nothing in the last 3 or 4 years anyway.
Yeah, I looked in the Association of Association Managers. Believe it or not, there is one, ASM, and they don't. They're more than happy to give you advice if you join them, but they don't. What they're saying is that what we need to do is sell sponsorships and sell products, rather than to rely on members joining, right, if we want to raise funds. Well, what I've tried to get us to do is to concentrate on projects that I think ultimately would be that we could monetize through either A, sponsorship, or B, charging people who don't want to be a member but who would like to use those products. Like the webinars. Yeah, and what we're finding is that very few people are paying for the webinars. They're joining. And so, I mean, the last couple webinars we had, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think everybody was a member, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Whatever happened with the initiative to have organizational memberships at a higher level?
I'll jump in. I mean, I started bringing that along and shared with the board for discussion probably 15 months ago the idea that the research I did at the time and suggested that we were unlikely to be successful at approaching organizations and asking for some sort of premium, substantial premium that evidence their commitment to or their financial commitment to ISMA. At the outset, we were of the belief that we could get organizations to drop $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 with us. I think the more clear-eyed assessment 15 months ago that was going to be near impossible given the state of the organization at that point in time, and the most promising route to go was to offer organizations the opportunity to buy at a reduced rate sort of group membership for a certain number of employees. At least at that point in time, there was not too much likelihood that we could do substantial fundraising, although we could do some and expand our membership ranks if we went that route.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth pursuing either way. I feel like I could sell that to Apt Associates, but I would need to articulate a clear benefit, obviously, to the company for why we should do this. And I would need to, build it into the budget cycle, which is another factor, because a lot of times people don't have unrestricted funds like that just laying around at their disposal. But if I know to plan for that, I can work it into my budget for my next fiscal year, and really plan for it.
Yeah. And the further consideration of both options to pursue in that regard and organizations to target became a part of a discussion that Craig and I began but didn't ever bring to closure in terms of looking at that also in the context of how we might wish to target and conduct outreach to organizations for additional purposes beyond organizational membership in ISMA, but more clearly for project support or funds or what have you.
Yeah. This is Nancy. Just one more comment. I wondered,
and this is probably pretty outrageous, but when I think of professional associations like this, I always think of national conferences, international conferences that actually raise money for the organization. And I guess I wonder whether Jeff would ever be open to his conference becoming an ISMA conference instead of World Social Marketing Conference. I know it's an outrageous comment, but I'm just curious.
Well, I don't think it's so outrageous, Nancy. I had the same thought.
So I think we know that they do that conference really on a shoestring, so to speak. I mean, they really, I don't know their numbers, but I feel like they try and accommodate a lot of different issues and needs, and they want to get the best turnout possible. So I don't think they've got a lot of profit margin built into their model.
But stepping beyond ISMA ownership or profit taking from that conference, I do wonder about the viability of ISMA conducting meetings, and perhaps the webinars experience is indicative of something here, but organizing, conducting meetings for which we charged a fee that produced some revenue and some profitability for us.
Yeah. Can I suggest one of the things that Nancy and I talked about, which was Nancy and I had supper last week in Seattle, and Nancy and I were both of the belief that the membership fees that we're currently charging, at least for developed countries, are quite low, especially given what people get from attending the webinars. I think there's some elasticity there that we could be thinking about higher fees for some countries that might, potentially double the amount of revenue that we'd have. And then if we combine that at some point with beginning to hold international conferences under the ISMA banner, that would be another potential source of funds.
I would just caution, though, Doug, that we have to build in enough room for various levels of membership. So, for example, in North America, people won't hopefully just be joining the International Social Marketing Association. They'll be joining the North American one, and they'll have to pay for that as well. And they may even have a local organization like the Pacific Northwest Social Marketing Association. If we all charge too much, it's going to get out of line and people won't pay it. So I think it's not just a question of how much can we get, but what will work for the whole group of us to attract the most number of people and engage them, because that's really what we're there for.
Right. Jay, I hear that, but at the same time, if we do not have the operating funds, we can't do a lot of the things we're interested in doing. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing people say, it seems unlikely at this point that we're going to get corporate funds unless it's for memberships for the members or potentially for a particular project or task.
And would a subscription model for the webinars for organisations be possible, a 1-year subscription, so that their employees or anybody involved could access them without actually joining?
Well, at the moment, all they need to do is have one person who's a member for $50 a year. They can have a whole bunch of people in the room with that person and access.
I know, but I'm wondering if we could sell the idea of a subscription to organisations to get, a number of their, that we could actually make some money that way.
Yeah, that's the
make
kind
more
of
money
thing
than $50 a pot is what I'm saying. It's more. That seems very cheap. Whereas an organisation could afford to pay more to subscribe to the webinars for a year. It could be valuable for them, and they'd get a tax deduction for it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of benefit that my company would see, because we had our colleague Huda present on the webinar last week, and I had a number of people from APT email me and say, how could I listen to that webinar without joining? Because, not sure that I want to belong to the association, but I want to hear Huda's talk. And some of them weren't physically in the same location where I am, so they couldn't just come down and listen in with me at my desk. But, being able to offer my colleagues a series of webinars as part of this package, I think, is a selling point.
I would agree, and from the research I started doing, organizations who were willing to pay to join an association like ours did expect to see a suite of services or a set of products that they could tap and make effective use of in the conduct of their business.
But what I'm saying is that I just think that webinar series is a real it really stands out as a very valuable product that the association offers, and I think that in itself could be sold as a product to organisations on a yearly basis, like $400, $500 a year or something.
So they don't have to
be nothing to an
organisation.
organisation.
Get a subscription.
Pardon?
Interesting. So they wouldn't have to join; they would just get a subscription.
No. We offer that as a product, because as an association it belongs to us. We can sell that as a product to organisations who would be interested in the type of stuff that's coming out, and we can put a price on it that we wouldn't get in membership fees, but organisations can afford it, and then their staff can listen to the webinars. They've got access to them, and it also promotes us as well. So some of the staff who listen to them might join.
Oh, are you talking about access to past webinar recordings?
Yep, and current, but join by the year.
Yeah. And Judy, I think the only major flaw in that thinking could be that an organization could avoid paying an organizational price if they simply had an individual in the organization who paid the individual price and who through that.
But you only get one station for that price, and the point is that when you've got multiple locations.
Yeah. Exactly. Like organisations buy software packages for their staff. Same thing. Everybody buying individually, the organisation pays and the staff are happy. The person who does it looks in the good books, corporate social responsibility and all that kind of stuff. So it's a win-win.
Win.
So this is Patrick. To pick up on that, that's kind of like offering the subscription model would provide an organization like Apter or IQ, for example, with maybe 4 seats at the webinar per live session and two login user ID and logins to access past ones.
Yeah. Well, whatever you think would be most, bring in the most money and be also something that organisations would be ready to pay for.
Good discussion. Thank you.
When?
Well, I like it. I'm also thinking about one of the things you could do is you could throw in that once a year you are called the corporate sponsor of a particular webinar.
Wow, that's a great idea. Yeah.
So this webinar is sponsored by.
I would even forget all the bells and whistles, and just strip this thing down to what's the essential features that people want to have with a webinar.
Yeah, go on. I'm not there yet, but I'm following.
Well, if people want to have more than 10 locations be able to access a site, then a $500 fee to be able to have a basically corporate access code that any of their people could use to watch the webinar would be valuable to them, regardless of whether their name's on it, regardless of anything else. And I think the idea of saying, well, now you're a corporate sponsor of ISMA, is like, well, why bother? Why should we bother calling them corporate sponsors? In fact, that gets us into more problems than just saying, look, we just have a subscription series that's available to corporations or anybody who wants multiple locations for a webinar.
Well,
and
I see where you're going with that.
Nestle wants to spend $500 on it, then fine. But if we have to then say, oh, now you're a corporate sponsor and your name appears on the webinars, now we've got problems.
But I think that would be like with a when you're running a conference and people, you've got gold levels and organisations that want to be shown as a sponsor would have to pay, like $1,000, $2,000, because that, you'd have to charge them a lot more if they want to be shown as a sponsor of one of the webinars.
Yeah, I mean, I see no problem with it. I see you have someone offer to be the sponsor of a webinar, and you comp them 4 seats, or just like you comp people. When someone's a gold sponsor at a conference, you comp them that particular a certain number of registrations, yeah. And then if they don't want to be corporate sponsors of the webinar, then I think you could sell them the subscription package of saying, well, you get X number of webinars per year. I think, what do we do, 4 per year? Is that right, Jane?
No, they're every 2 months. 6
oh my
a year.
God, that's 6 a year.
Yeah, really.
So we could sell it. So we could sell the subscription, yeah, and then we could also sell the sponsorship of a particular webinar, where you would just get you'd get comped 4 seats for that particular webinar.
Mm-hmm. But pay a lot more money for it.
Yeah, I think that's what I do, but well.
So I think we could make quite a lot of money out of that.
I do too.
No, I think we
Who
should
would
have a
be
committee
approaching
look at
these?
this and move on with the agenda.
Can I just ask a question quickly? Who would be approaching those companies, in your view, like this way of doing it? Who's our sales force?
Board members would be approaching their corporations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think we use each of our networks, right? Like I'm plugged into maybe PSI, and Patrick's plugged into FHI, and we kind of use our personal connections to figure out.
Okay, so the board members.
Yeah, and we need some kind of a, like a glossy thing showcasing it, so that somebody, if they want to look at it to see what the package is involved, it looks pretty good.
I think we need someone to take the lead on this fundraising, and fundraising development. Someone who has the bandwidth to do it, as Gail likes to say.
I like that.
And it's not Gail.
Yeah.
Someone who's not Gail or Wynn or Craig. That leaves Tom. Tom just left the call. Nancy, Patrick.
Good. In that case, it's Tom.
Yeah.
Tom didn't leave the call.
That's how that works.
And he's taking the notes, and he's not writing this one down.
I think Jay and I would be glad to help whoever takes the lead to develop the sell sheet. But I know I've been working with Jay on this. What has it been, like almost 2 years now? And there's a lot of work involved in organizing these webinars.
Yeah, this is. Sorry, Wynn, I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead. Especially.
I was just going to say, why don't we do kind of a little bit of informal market research here, and I can certainly talk to our leadership here and over at FHI and maybe a couple of others, and just see if there's interest. And if there is interest, then we can maybe become a bit more formal in describing the offering, and I'm actually hearing 2 offerings. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. Because it does sound like a lot of time and effort to maybe pitch something that there's no market for. So let's figure out if the market's there.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we still need a point person who will kind of drive it forward.
Patrick, all 4 officers rolled into one, and now he's going to pick up development. Bob, you're a Superman.
Hey, I'm not going to talk anymore if everything keeps rolling this way.
Well, you see, if you just become president, then remember everything else is supposed to roll downhill. Somehow that doesn't happen. I don't know. Okay, all right. Well, shall we, Tom? My sense is that there's interest in this, And there's a willingness on the part of the people who are in the call right now to do some informal market research. But it's not clear that we have leadership yet for this moving forward. And where there's no leadership, then there's, I guess it's really just a joint board responsibility for now.
Okay. All right. And I would just amend, I think it's super that we start with exploring what might be the revenue-generating potentials of the seminar beyond what they currently do. But I would hope that that's just the beginning of our looking at strategies for generating revenue through products and services. I mean, I don't know what the answer over the long term is going to be, but I think we need to keep ourselves open to identifying additional ways, additional products that we can market and sell.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree too. And sorry, it was Gail. Gail, you spoke up, right? So maybe you and I could just do some informal and then report back within a few weeks, and that would be, at least some good data to start making some decisions on prior to the next meeting.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay, should we also make sure that you guys have like a standard script or concept about what you're going to be asking these people?
That makes good sense. Gail, do you want me to write up something real quick?
Yeah, 'cause I'm thinking I can do a little bit of that too with a couple different groups.
Okay, great.
But I just want to make sure that we're all kind of, vaguely talking about the same thing, because obviously what we hear is going to inform what eventually happens.
Let's make sure that what Craig said is clear. Craig said that he would be willing to take a script that had been written and go check out other organizations to see if they were interested. But I thought maybe Patrick thought that Craig said that he would write it. Am I wrong?
I will co-create it.
Okay, so we're netting out that Patrick and Gail and Craig will develop this sort of product spec sheet and test market it on a limited scale basis, right?
Yeah.
Good start.
That sounds good to me. Craig and Gail, does that work for you guys?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Doug McKinsey Moore is going to get his group to make it look really good. Is that right, Doug?
I hope so.
That was a smooth transition to Doug and update on what's happening with the website facelift.
Sure.
Right.
So,
how are we doing with the website's facelift, Doug?
Yeah, so where we are with it is that I was able to get a quote for about 4 different options for dealing with a website. One of those involved taking my existing site and my new site and skinning it specifically for ISMA. And then we had several other options that we looked at, creating sites from scratch, taking the site that we have presently, redrafting it. And all of those were quite expensive. I mean, way beyond. What's the expression that you use, Tom? Poor as a church mouse or something like that? Anyway, all of those options were tens of thousands of dollars. And what we turned to more recently is looking at the possibility of either potentially using Google Sites and skinning that. And then when you had also looked into some possibilities or got some feedback about some other options that might be considerably less expensive as well, right? Do you want to speak to those? We're going to have a meeting, by the way, of our committee next week to review those possibilities.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. The other possibility, the first possibility was using Google Sites, and I already today had a bit of a conversation with Sarah, one of our designers, about that. And the good part of using a Google site is that it's all been donated, everything except for the design. The bad thing about it is that it does have some limitations in its features. Those features are not deal breakers, but essentially it does not allow you to have a really, really nice looking site, such as you could get from a WordPress site or a site that was built from scratch, using Ruby on Rails, like Doug's beautiful site has.
And when I would say this, if I could just jump in, so I think the other limitation is that the ability to be able to search databases is more limited within Google than it is within some of the other possibilities that we could be looking at. So I think what you were stressing last when we had our meeting, Win, was that you could include search terms within, for example, a title field, and we'd be able to find those records, and we could save those records so people had quick access to them. But some of the more advanced types of searches that we might like people to be involved in would be more limited within using Google.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, in order for any text to be searchable in Google, and actually in many different sites, it would have to be written as an article. In other words, Google wouldn't be able to go into a PDF file or a PowerPoint presentation that's in a database or stored in a warehouse online and be able to pick that apart and see what's really in there. So that's one of the big limitations in it. Now, if you wanted to have the database be completely searchable like that, the next option that we saw starts in at about $6,000 to start up the site and about $600 per month to maintain the site, which is a pretty hefty cost. It's about it would be investing in a $6,000 up front and then having an extra right now we're spending about $200 to $300 a month on our current website, and that would bump it up to $600 a month for the website. So,
wait, Wynn, can I just clarify? You're talking about that Bootstrap program, right? Not Google.
Yeah, the Bootstrap program would be the one that would be $6,000 and then $600 a month.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So the one thing we have to be very cautious about is that if we do move to another platform, that we make sure that the maintenance costs for that platform are not going to do us in. So I know we have to pay for the features that we want, but if we move over to like a site that's going to cost us $600 a month for management, we'd have to be sure that we were going to be able to generate enough income by that, to maintain that site.
But the Google platform is free, right?
For us, it is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that's a key consideration, obviously. I mean.
But now, this is where I would ask, now does corporate sponsorship of the website make sense? To specifically pay for those costs.
But do you think anyone would cover, Craig, ongoing maintenance costs as compared to the cost to actually develop a site?
I can tell you that my company would be much more interested in supporting the group membership model, access to the webinars, because they want to see the direct benefit to our staff for learning how to do social marketing better. They are not going to be excited about paying for a website. That's like too far removed from how it benefits us and our staff.
What about with an academic institution? Is that, I was just thinking of the meetup that happened over at American, and is there an opportunity to talk to some of those academic institutions that board members or others are affiliated with?
Craig, what about University of South Florida?
What was that?
What about the University of South Florida?
Oh, I seriously doubt that.
Okay.
To me, we have to separate the association website from even if it looks exactly the same, from what I would call project websites or income generating sites, potentially income generating sites. Now, the potential income generating sites I think we can have include this resource exchange site, and it's possible for us to set up the resource exchange site as an external site and then just have it linked into our association website. But we would have to monetize that resource exchange site either as a project site or as a subscription-based site to be able to keep it up.
If I understand what you're saying, when it's kind of like our webinars, if you're not a member, you can get one for $50, but you might as well just join. Would you do something like that and say, well, if you want to use it for a month only, we'll give you it for $50, access for $50, but you might as well join for the year?
Yeah, it seems to me that I don't think many people would choose the monetized site win. I think that the attraction to joining ISMA is that we're providing people with these wonderful webinars that Jay's been organizing, and they get access to resource databases that help them to do their work more effectively, and that makes ISMA relevant to a lot of people. So I think we can monetize one site rather than thinking about potentially having a separate site. But I was wondering if you could give us any further insight on what are we getting for $600 per month for maintenance and support over top of the actual creation of the site in the first place.
You mean for this other Bootstrap
for the
option?
Bootstrap, yeah, yes.
Yeah, well, what they're offering to help us do is to set up our own community discussion boards and to have a community manager who would help us to generate interest and discussions on those boards. They would also maintain the back end of the website for us to make sure that it's up to date and that it's secure. And they would provide us with technical assistance in basically running our own website. But would they do much for us? I don't think so, honestly. Yeah, so it's kind of like with this MemberClick site that we have right now. We can pay the people at MemberClicks to reskin our site if we want to. We can pay for them to help us to add articles for us. But
and even port over to their new site, right? Because there's a new version that has all sorts of new capabilities if we wanted them.
Right. It's just basically what we have to do is we would have to pay them over and above the $200 that we have now, that we're paying them per month for just maintaining the basic site. The more, basically, Doug, the more I look at this, the more what I'm seeing is that what we're getting from our MemberClick site could be really much better used than we're using it. And I think that one of the biggest problems with our site as it is now is the design, the way that it looks, which I think we all agree on. And that's not something that can't be overcome by talking with MemberClicks about what we would really like the site to look like.
Okay. So maybe we can move that conversation to the meeting that we've got next week and, look at MemberClicks versus Bootstrap and what that might mean to us if we were going that direction. What are the pros and cons of those different choices? And then I can prepare a report for the next board meeting that provides some feedback on that. This is the type of thing, though, I'm wondering, given the necessity and need for us to move on this, that perhaps it can go back to the board before the next board meeting and we can have conversations online about what direction we should be moving in so our committee can move more quickly.
That would be great.
I think that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Thank you, Doug.
Jay, do you want to give us an update on Advance's webinar?
Sure. Thanks, Win. As noted in my report, upcoming for the next 6 months out, next up is January 27th. The donor is in the details, the common ground between social marketing and donor behavior, presented by Lucia Barros from Brazil. In March, actual date to be still determined near the end of March, Tom Carroll, who's from Australia, an international case study likely on the World Lung Foundation's tobacco control work in Vietnam from 2009 to 2015, and he says he will include a speaker from Vietnam since that's where the case study takes place. We're pressing him on that. And then May 2016, with the help of Karen and, is it Nidra or Nedra? I'm never sure how to pronounce her.
It's Nidra.
Thank you. Karen and Nidra, we're piloting an international social marketing course fair, which would be like a webinar conference concept. And instructors who offer courses that are open to an international audience would have an opportunity to pitch their courses. So that can be a week-long, month-long, semester-long, and certificate or degree program. The participants would travel from one country to take. It could be workshops like Doug offers that are offered in many different countries. It could be distance learning options and webinars like I offer, like they offer at USF. We will offer, I originally put in 10 minutes, but I realized that depending on take-up, it'll be 7 to 10 minutes with 3 to 5 minutes for Q&A. Set schedule with some sort of discussions or things that are flexible in there so that if people go over, we actually have some buffer and we can catch up. Probably we wouldn't have 2 webinars for that. We just have one, but it might get broken into 2 webinars if we get a lot of people wanting to participate. And that's it. Thank you. Oh, God, unless there's questions.
And of course, people will pay in order to participate in those.
The actual presenters?
Yes.
There's a good question, Craig. We haven't got to that point yet, and so it's open. Now, if they're already an ISMA member, should they have to pay to present? And I was even wondering in our first year of doing it, should we even make the presenters have to pay to present? Should we just do it to get it going and have lots of people and have the people who are participating either be a member or pay to become a member or for the webinar itself? And then once we've got it going the first year and people know what they're doing, then we might charge for presenters as well if they're not members. But I leave that open to the board, and I'm happy to work with guidance on revenue creation if you want to go that route.
Well, the question we ask in the digital world is, who's the product?
Say again?
And if the product, and whoever the product is, that one is free. So if the product is we want to have people to find out about all these great resources that are available, we're going to make it free to the resources, and we're going to make people pay for the opportunity to hear about them and learn about them. That's one model. I mean, another model would be to say the product is the people who will actually learn about your offering in social marketing. So if you want the opportunity to reach those people, you've got to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. If
it's
we
like
have it as just one of our...
It's a job fair model.
Yeah, if we have it as just one of our regular 6 webinars, then, the normal pricing might be attractive. If we're trying to differentiate it, which, it is something different, and maybe it would happen twice a year eventually, because in the Southern Hemisphere they've got a different, reversed annual schedule. Maybe it makes more sense. So where does that bring us?
Don't give it away. That's
Is that the, I'd like this brought up, I guess, in the other meeting, which I won't be at, and to get clear consensus. Craig is saying don't give it away, and I'm not sure.
This is Nancy. I would say I would say if they're not a member, if the presenter isn't a member, then they pay because basically it's promotion.
Yes.
If it's not the member, it's the institution that's promoting their program. The member is just the spokesperson.
Okay, well, I have no problem with that.
You just game the system by saying, okay, well, we'll pay $50 and one of our people will be a member of ISMA so they can present.
Yeah. Okay, what I hear the board saying is if you want to present, either you have to be a member or someone at your institution has to be a member and sponsor you.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No,
what are you
that's
saying?
leaving money on the table.
So you're saying if you want to present, you've got to be a member?
If your institution wants to present, it's going to cost you $250. I don't care who presents.
If someone else wants to organize it another year, sure, but I want to make it work the first year, and I think to set an example, we need to make it reasonable. People are going to.
$250 may be too high, but.
I think we should just go ahead with it with Jay. I mean, take these suggestions and do what you think is the best in this case. And for the first year, and let's see how it goes. That's my sense. Because I think
Jay,
people are going to want to see it.
How many presenters are you thinking of, or would be a part of the showcase? So to
well,
speak?
Given that it's the first year, it's really hard to tell. But if it includes people like Doug and me, and there's a whole bunch of universities that offer courses that people might be interested in, if we could get 20 or 30 participants, presenters, and so maybe it would bring in, I guess depending on how you look at it, it could be that many people times that amount of money, or it could be that we get some new members out of it.
And the format would kind of be like speed dating?
Pardon?
I was going to say, and the format would kind of be like speed dating, so 20 people showcasing their courses over 90 minutes, so just a few minutes each. Is that kind of...
Oh, no, it would be more than 90 minutes. It would be 7 minutes plus 3 minutes. So that's 10 minutes each.
Okay.
So you can get maybe 6 of them going maybe 5 of them in an hour, and then you've got some slippage. So we have a discussion or a payment or something that we can switch if we need to. And then there's some additional benefits that I think would make it worth selling in the longer run. Like we can actually ask participants to tell us which of these ones they're interested in getting more information from and send those lists to the presenters so that they get warm leads that way.
This is Gail. I mean, I kind of agree with Craig that you're basically marketing their programs for them through this format, and I think like a couple $100 as the price of entry is not unreasonable at all. I know that this semester I'm teaching at George Washington University's MPH program in a health communication and marketing class, and their online classes are just growing like by leaps and bounds. Like they can't find instructors fast enough because they just keep adding more and more sections. I mean, these programs I think are just really burgeoning, and they're just exploding with demand. So it seems like a couple $100 to have that forum and be able to sell your program to even more students is not a...
I'm really pleased to hear you say that, that we can eventually sell it. But again, I want to come back to the reason why I'm personally dedicated to making this happen and why I'm spending my time organizing it is not to help make more money for ISMA, although that's something I figure is worthwhile. It's because we need to start providing more value to academic members so that they join and become part of the fold. And so for me, the big question is how can we do it so we get a whole bunch of a whole bunch of presenters and enough people coming the first year to make it viable, and then we could start monetizing it. I don't mind if we try to do it mildly the first year. If the board said, look, charge them $100, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't dissuade people. Maybe it's all the same $200 at that point. But I don't want to put up too much of a roadblock the first time to people presenting until we can prove, the concept.
And Jay, it seems to me that the other side of this is what's the audience that we're going to deliver to these people that makes their participation, either paid or unpaid, worth it for them.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Absolutely. And so we can say, look, we will give you an audience that you don't normally get to. We'll give you the original audience and some additional people. But, each year we're getting more people that means. Like right now we've got the Pacific Northwest group coming in, as another 100 people. As we grow our audience base, as ESMA comes in and some of these other associations, that's more and more people that we're bringing to them.
Just an observation, we're now at 6:45 and have a lot that we haven't gotten through.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. My sense is that if people have suggestions for Jay on this follow-up, could we please send that to the directors list so that we can have more of a discussion on this? I think it would be real fruitful.
Absolutely. And that way it's transparent and everyone can see what people are saying.
Mm-hmm. And can I ask, Gail, do you have an update on the newsletter project? I think you already talked about it a bit in your communication committee update. Is there anything special that you wanted to bring forward for us?
Well, I'll just be very brief. Happy to say that we've got 2 new volunteers who just signed on to help with the newsletter, so we've got a really robust team now working on it. The next one is coming out the first week of December. They very much want input from the board, so Wynn has already agreed to provide an update, but anybody else on the board who wants to provide either a thought piece or any kind of an update about board projects or initiatives, we welcome all those kinds of contributions. I got Craig's entry today about the Florida conference, so that will go in along with the Agents of Change Summit and the climate conference coming up. I think one important metric to note is that the last newsletter had a 36% open rate, which is fairly consistent with the last few newsletters, even though we've been playing around with the format. And as you've probably noticed, we went from having kind of the big, long article format newsletters to the shorter format with the links to get the whole story. So we just have like a teaser, and then you have to click through to get the rest of the content, which is what people had asked for. But having done that, the open rate, it hasn't really changed. It's only a couple of points different. So that's just kind of interesting to me. The last issue, we had Craig do the opinion piece on the White House executive order on using behavioral science, and that had the highest open rate. So it just kind of confirms that people are looking for these kind of innovative initiatives, thought leadership, opinion kinds of pieces. And that spurred a discussion in our meeting today about whether we could engage other thought leaders. And Nancy, your name came up, and Phil Kotler. Like there's a sort of a request to hear other expert perspectives on what does this executive order mean for our community? Like what does this represent in terms of opportunities for social marketing? So I think if anybody wants to take on that topic and do further musings on it, that would be very much of interest.
I'll see what I can do about it, Gail.
Okay. And we also talked about maybe doing a webinar on it, but Jay, it sounds like your webinar schedule is pretty packed, so I don't know if you have room for another one.
I'm sorry, a webinar on what, Gail?
On this White House presidential executive order to use, basically mandating all federal agencies in the U.S. to use behavioral sciences in their behavior change initiatives.
Yeah. What I would say is, that's exactly why we need a North American Association, because that's a local interest story. And, we don't have, we could, but it would alienate to some degree, I think, people in other parts of the world for whom it really isn't relevant, unless they're trying to sell to them.
Well, I think the international connection is that it's clearly being modeled on the UK initiative that started a few years ago with the Prime Minister's office. And so they saw how well it worked in the UK, and now the US is adopting it too.
That's right.
Australia has it as well.
Unfortunately, it doesn't always work so well in the UK, though. If you look at some of the programs that the Behavioral Insights team was providing feedback on, like specifically the one to retrofit people's homes, that did not work very well.
Still good for a discussion, I think. Though.
So yes, still very good for discussion, but it was very much behavioral economics rather than social marketing.
We do have in our calendar. We try to fill it, a bit ahead. I think we could 6 or 8 months ahead, so that we don't get in the last minute trying to figure out what we're doing. But if there's something that you want to do, we'll find a way of working with it. So, do you want to talk with me about that later, Gail, or how do you want to move forward with that?
Sure. Why don't we have a separate offline conversation about that?
Okay, great.
And I apologize, but I'm going to have to get off the call now. Sorry, I have another commitment I have to get to.
No.
Sure, Gail.
Thank you very much,
everybody. Bye.
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 No, you can't leave, Gail.
Gail?
Left.
She's gone.
Left the building.
On some other, let's talk briefly about some other priority projects that are going on. Nancy, Craig, how's the MPH curriculum push going on?
This is Nancy. I'll be really, really brief. I have been working with the Dean of the USF, Donna Peterson. She's past president of CEPH, which the timing on this is incredible. And there's a procedure for us to submit an additional competency. And I'm in the process of crafting that. And Craig, I'll loop you in on the latest version of it. And Donna looked at it and she said she liked it, and that it's a matter of submitting it through a real formal route where there's basically a comment on a draft, and it's perfect timing.
Oh, great. So you're using our academic competencies that was developed to push that forward?
It's not exactly that. They have a list of academic competencies for MPH, and there's one particular section that is relevant on program planning, and we're adding one sentence which basically says that a competency is being able to develop a strategic plan, a strategic program plan.
Okay. Okay.
And then, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
No, that's fine. I think that's the major update.
Craig, for public opinion leadership, are you seeing any other opportunities, or have you any suggestions for us moving forward in having an op-ed piece? Are you working on that at all?
Well, I think the op-ed pieces are something that personally I'm going to do more of. I think if we're going to do that as an organization, we need to figure out a way that we can do those quickly, get them reviewed quickly, and out.
Do you have a suggestion to make as to how we can proceed to make that happen?
Well, I hate to say another committee.
Yeah. So are we in the situation where this is something that we want to do, but we don't have the resources? Or is it a situation where is there a way that we can do this without requiring a lot of resources for this? Like, could we have, for example, a guest opinion leader, guest op-ed, like we've had with you, Craig, this last time? I mean, could Nancy do an op-ed? Could Judy do an op-ed? Could Doug do one?
Now that Gail's left the call, would it be appropriate for this to become another focus of the communication committee, where in effect they work with members of the board to create a sort of an editorial calendar? If our goal is one of these thought pieces every other month, that the process and the people driving the process are interested members of the communication committee working with individual ones of us as appropriate to the editorial calendar.
I like it if they've got the resources to do it, manpower.
They do have 2 new people. Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's a way of dovetailing it with work that is otherwise being done or ideas being pursued around content for our own newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that back to the communication committee and see what they say on that. Social marketing events calendar, Jay?
Yeah, with a piece of bread in his mouth. Okay. All I want to say on this is that we got a volunteer, Leonidas Skerlatopoulos from Greece. We did negotiate that with the ESMA, and we actually, as a volunteer, we suggested at first that he approach ESMA, which he did, but he eventually came back, and he's been working out really well, and so he's doing the work right now.
You know, and I wanted to bring to the attention of the board, if you haven't looked at this social marketing events calendar lately, you really need to look at it. Every board member needs to look at it because this thing is packed. It is packed with social marketing events. And I think we need to be promoting it more than we have. So please do take a look at it. And I'd love to get your ideas as to where we should be promoting it more, or how we can be promoting more this calendar as a a resource that's or a feature of membership. Standards of Practice white paper series.
Okay, not quite clear how this became mine, but I think the issue on the table is that Hamilton raised his hand and volunteered to spearhead this effort. I think it's another way in which we thought about increasing the visibility of social marketing and ISMA and trying to become an even more clear thought leader, opinion leader in this space. The immediate issue on the table is now that Hamilton has needed to drop off the board, at least for now, is there another member of the board who would like to spearhead the effort? And I can see lots of hands going up as we speak. We can pursue this with the group tomorrow, and then come back to the full board with, and also pursue maybe through Claire and the volunteer bank, if we can find someone who wants to take the lead on this. But for the moment, it's sitting unaddressed because of Hamilton's departure.
We're coming up to the top of the hour, but I can't leave the call without at least recognizing Nancy and the Visual Hammer. Her question that she's put out. As we know, Nancy has already submitted a creative brief, and the tagline "Influencing Behaviors for Good." People were okay with that. There was about 78%, 80% support for the effort to develop a visual hammer. The board voted on that. A little over half supported the idea of 4 graphic symbols depicting behaviors in the major areas of health, injury prevention, environment, and community. And there was a general expression on the part of the board that influencing behaviors for good was a good verbal nail. All right. So Nancy has come back with this visual hammer revised with a visual part, and wanted to get a vote, which will be done after the meetings, but wanted to give you the opportunity to make comments on the visual hammer revised right now, so she has a sense of what people think.
And because I know people are going to think this, the next steps would definitely be, okay, so where is this going to show up? Where is it going to be promoted? Who's going to use it when? Will it be trademarked, et cetera? So right now the conversation is really about the visual. So thank you for going to that slide, Win, but I think if you want, you can go back now to the visual.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and one little comment I'd like to make is that assuming this was the concept is approved, I would want us to see us change the color codes so that they more match the ISMA. In other words, the same green and the same orange. And I realize the red is a different one, but on the website I see we have a red, so I wasn't too worried about it. So I'll stop at that.
Can I
I thought it was excellent, really good. I mean, it just really hits the nail on the head.
Thank you.
No, the nail is the other one. This is the hammer.
I thought it was fantastic. I think it's really good.
Nancy, I wanted to reiterate something that I mentioned when I saw you last week in Seattle. I wonder about whether we should be having a broader conversation about replacing the logo for ISMA with something like this. It's not clear to me that we need both. And I'm wondering if other board members have thoughts about that.
I can tell you that the communication committee discussed this today, specifically with the designer who had volunteered to work on new materials for ISMA, and they thought that the ISMA logo should stay where it is, the way it is, but they also thought that the visual hammer as it is revised should be using the colors that ISMA is using, and so they actually asked for those Pantone colors, which they were given. Right. They also suggested that it should use the same font, that this should use the same font as the ISMA font, okay. Which is a Myriad Pro. And I can send that to your designer so that they have that.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if we can hear, though, from members of the board around this, because what I've always thought is that it's confusing for us to have essentially what's going to look like to many people as two different logos.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if anyone else shares that concern.
Well,
I
guess
Doug.
my first response to that, Doug, is I don't know that this is supposed to be a logo for ISMA at all. My understanding of what Nancy's been working on is this is to help people understand what social marketing means.
Right.
And another decision that we made, or conclusion we reached many, many months ago, was that it would be most especially used in connection with making the definition come alive, that this was a visual representation of all of those words that were included in the ISMA-approved definition, as opposed to a logo for the organization, and that we wanted to try to create something that could come to have widespread use, not narrow use only by and on behalf of ISMA.
Yeah.
So
because of time frame, you guys, when could you go to the next slide? I think that those conversations are the very next step. And what I would propose to do is that we get an okay on the visual, and then I would like to draft a bunch of potential uses and things like what you just said, and get the board's vote on those potential things. In other words, get a reading from the board on where and when and how it's used.
I'm just going to have to go in a minute, but I just have one thing to say. Rebecca and I went to a parliamentary inquiry. They were talking about health promotion, and we were able to get across to them what social marketing was, and that's all been put in the parliamentary report. But I think something like this would be really good for, say, our government to use to explain, so that everybody's clear on what social marketing is, because, our politicians don't really understand it. So I think it's fantastic that Nancy's done this, and I'm hoping that it could be used by governments as well.
Me too. Yes, me too. Absolutely. So,
okay.
So the main thing that's different here is the vaccination thing. That was the main thing that's been worked on for the last 2 months, because it looked like someone was injecting drugs. So I guess I would just like to hear a reading as to is everybody okay with this visual? To be determined next as to where and when, other than, and I totally like the idea of changing the font.
Yes, I'm fine with it. This is Patrick.
I guess I'm raising the question, why is
Judy
it trying
Drennan.
to change the font and use the ISMA colors if, in fact, it's not meant to be an ISMA logo?
I'm hoping that it will be at least a subset of ISMA. It may not be right next to its logo, but it will appear on our website.
Yeah, so that'll help with that. Okay.
And what I would like to, as the next step, one of the things I will suggest is adding the tagline on the ISMA logo of, influencing behaviors for good.
That's great.
Well, that's another conversation.
Yeah, that's another conversation. Okay, thank you. I'm going to take that as we can go to the next step of changing the font visually, and the colors. But other than that, it's okay with this group.
And it's obvious Nancy has worked very hard to bring this along over now a long period of time. More recently, Gail, Huda, and their colleagues have jumped in to help bring it along. They also deserve credit for their contributions.
Correct.
And let that be written into the meeting notes from our great secretary.
We can do that. It's at odds with the current intent of meeting notes, but I'll do that. If you want me to pick this up, Craig had already mentioned the wisdom of our thinking about having strategically selected speakers at future board meetings. My sense of the feedback on that, while it was brief, was positive, and it's a way of cultivating interest, awareness, and support for ISMA. So unless there are other comments, let's move directly into this issue of scheduling board meetings for next year. The minimum requirements in the bylaws are 4 quarterly meetings, just as we've held them this year. We've had meetings in February, May, August, and now November, and obviously reflective of the diversity now present among the board, diversity of geography and time. We're holding 2 sessions and dealing with both the pluses and the minuses of that process. I think the question before the board, for which we seek your input, should we hold on to quarterly meetings? Should we be open to having perhaps more frequent but maybe shorter meetings if we're going to advance all of the business of ISMA? And as we saw on today's agenda, we didn't make it through a considerable portion of what's there. Should we talk more frequently in order to get momentum and keep things moving? What's the board's feedback on the frequency and scheduling of meetings?
I would do it every 2 months.
I'd agree with Nancy. I think we need them more frequently, Tom.
Yeah, this is Patrick.
I also think it'd be good on our agenda if we put minutes attached and we just kept to a schedule on it. I don't mean minutes like written minutes. I mean like timing.
Yeah. I mean, if we did something like every 2 months, we could structure it that, say, no less than 4 times a year, we have calls focused on the business of ISMA, and the other calls could be focused on projects and activities, such, for example, the ethics discussion that was advanced but tabled for purposes of this meeting, and probably for which a longer discussion would be very fruitful.
That's a possibility, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with every 2 months, and we should vary the content of the meeting, but I don't think we should require every board member to be at every meeting. We should just say that they have to be at certain board meetings, or they have to be at a certain number of board meetings during the year.
Yeah.
I think there should be some minimum.
There is a minimum. It's 4.
Yeah, it's 4. The bylaws provide for 4 quarterly meetings, which I think must be essential for our members, to the fullest extent possible. Then we could these other meetings could be called as provided for in the bylaws, could be called special meetings, and they could have a more narrow scope, including, for example, guest speakers or in-depth discussion of issues facing us around ethics, around fundraising, or around any of the priority projects.
Okay. Guys, I just wondered, for the meeting tomorrow, could I please give somebody some info to talk to the slide right before this that I didn't get a chance to talk to?
Yeah, you can send that to Tom, and he'll talk for you.
And I'm going to have to leave because I'm in another meeting here that has started 12 minutes ago.
And what am I going to talk about, Nancy?
I'd love to
the update on the Pacific Northwest Social Marketing Association.
Okay.
All right, happy to do so. All right.
Okay. So can we adjourn this meeting so we stay as much on time as possible then?
Okay.
Tom?
Of course, Mr. Chair. We can. We have exceeded our time. Thanks to everyone for their contribution. Sorry we didn't make it through everything, but I think it's a good sign that we have more things to consider than we had time to address today. I hope that is indicative of momentum that's going to help drive us forward.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Really appreciate it. And bye-bye for now.
Patrick Cook.
Left. Nancy. Left.